Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us here again on TartleCast. We are joined by a special guest today, Catherine Delcin of the Delcin Consulting Group. Catherine, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. You are the managing attorney of the group, correct?
I am.
Yeah, beautiful. And you guys have a background in helping earlier stage businesses and entrepreneurs scale up, but with a strong legal background so that when they get to the point of being at scale, they're not going to face a lot of the legal challenges that could have easily been solved in the beginning if they had spoken with you at your firm, correct?
Precisely. We help set the baseline and the infrastructure for them.
So explain a little bit about that. Explain about the impetus of the Delson Consulting Group and how you guys kind of set people off on the right foot.
Sure. I think generally people start with the idea of the business and then they get so busy doing that they forget everything else that falls into that box, that category that allows them to pursue, not just pursue it, but pursue it successfully. So when we come in and we work with clients at Delcin Consulting Group, we help set the foundation for example, for intellectual property rights, establishing the right corporate governance, and helping in terms of even some business consulting in terms of hierarchy structures, HR. All those are key pieces that will allow the business to ensure that internally that it is a highly set up in a way that allows them to thrive and not only let's get funded, let's do this, let's do a round series for this, there's that, but then
Hmm.
protecting IP, but then we don't have the hierarchy that allows us to scale and or allows us to sell if we wanted to.
Okay, that makes sense. And which firms are you specializing in? Are they just technology companies, or do you have a little bit of a wider net?
A little bit of a wider net. A lot of tech companies we work with, but we also do a lot of consumer driven type of industries. For example, I mean, we're seeing a much more influx of people launching their own enterprise, providing services, providing products. So it's for that consumer oriented services. It's a little bit of garden variety, but the emphasis there is that a lot of it is really driven by service to others.
No, I love that. So, in the advision or advisory services which you are giving to these firms, how are you advising them today with protecting themselves given the advancements in artificial intelligence? You talked about intellectual property, that also falls into copyright. How are you giving them guidance around that now that we've seen such a crazy growth around its adoption, but also the amount of content these things are generating?
I think we stay abreast of the changes as they come and advise them to look proactively. And what we're seeing as far as the trends are that, first it was a touch and go in terms of what is protectable when there is non human that is creating that, whether it's a code, whether it's anything else. Now we're seeing a little bit more looser criteria for patents, and we're being told that if it meets the standard where it's non-obvious, it's useful, and I can't think of the third criteria right now,
It's okay.
but
Yeah.
then it is patentable, even though before it was kind of iffy that it could be. I think our guidance has always been whatever they're working on to make sure what we know for a fact, what we can count on is that if there is human involvement and it meets the criteria, whether it's a patent or a trademark of some sort, then generally it'll be protectable. So I think the guidance has been to ensure that there is some human involvement, regardless of what it is that is happening, so that they can ensure that what they're working on is
So as these things scale up and become more advanced, what happens when it becomes indistinguishable between something created by human and something created by the artificial intelligence itself? Do you think that is sort of a front-running risk for the firms that you are advising? I know in our case, that's definitely something we deal with every day around data. So I'm curious what you have to say about that.
it is a risk. And here's the thought there: if you can't beat them, maybe you should join them.
Hmm.
And the question is, do you want to, whether it's your firm or a company that we're advising, the question to them is, other than the guidance, is what is it that we're setting up so that we can partake as this industry is evolving, right?
Hmm.
I think it is at the floor to ground to some degree, and we are able to participate at some level. And I understand there's some people that have ethical considerations about this and they feel a particular way. But ultimately, if that's the way the trend is moving, technology is moving, we will not be able to stop it. So, and there are benefits that a business or any individual, if they look at, of course, there's cons and pros, but I think there are a lot of benefits that can come from the use of this, and how we choose to manage, how we choose to position it. Are we going to treat it as a threat that's overtaking everything? Or are we going to say, hey, this is something that can be used to some degree, and we still need human involvement to manage the risk and protect everything else?
So, do you have any examples of firms you're working with right now where they're doing this thing that you're advising them on and are seeing any sort of benefit from that?
I can't think of one off the top of my head that I could say without, disclosing things that I'm not supposed to disclose. But I can tell you that a lot of these conversations are, in a way, hush hush, in that I think people want to hold the integrity of what they do, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge to to move in with the times, but also position themselves as being at the edge of what is really happening, or the future of what will happen.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so you know that data is racking itself in droves at a lot of different younger corporate entities and larger ones. Have you started to develop a strategy in the Delcin Consulting Group around data management, data privacy, how that data gets used? Because that's a big part of scaling now. One is, well, how you collect it, how you're storing it, but also how you're analyzing it. Is that in your conversations?
That is part of our conversations. And I'll tell you right now, I don't have a firm resolve around it. I think,
How come?
I think part of it is that the first webinar I ever did was back in 2010 or 11, or 11ish maybe, and it was around AI and data. And back then it was like, oh, big data, what is it? What is, And I'll tell you, it's a topic that's always been interesting to me personally, but I think we haven't had as much of a specific client that ushered us to dig deeper into that in particular at this moment.
Hmm.
But it's definitely something that, on my mind, as far as how else can we drive and provide insight into something like that.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine how it could not be given the fact that you advise tech firms and any of the consumer focused firms or consumer products also have third party apps they create to increase their engagement and collect data. So to me, it seems like a rock solid strategy to focus on just given where things are scaling into. Just as much as having a physical product is about having a non physical presence. And you can see that with the Home Depots, right? Forever 21s, all of those brands, creating those things. They have these core products that they do, but they also want to increase engagement with devices and applications to do that data collection to understand their consumers, because that's a big part of scale. If you can't engage with them, you can't scale. And I know that scaling is a big part of your strategy. So it's like, how do you protect that data as an asset for scaling, just given where technology is developing and headed, right? You can't ignore it. So that's why I was curious on your thoughts.
Yeah, and I think part of it is also some of our consulting. When you do consulting, it's piecemeal.
Hmm.
Certain aspects is delegated, certain aspects are not. So when we come in and they tell us this is the piece we need you to work on, so we focus highly on that piece.
So you're saying that the majority of the younger firms that you may be working with that you're trying to build to scale, they don't have a focused strategy around data, or they just don't share it?
To our knowledge, they deal with that internally.
Interesting. I think that that'd be like the first thing they bring to you, especially when it comes to IP protection, right?
Right, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. And where have you seen some sort of a lot of cutting edge development and scale on your side? Is it all really around the IP? Are you guys employing artificial intelligence to accelerate your consulting practices? Have there any of that use happening on your end?
Not as much on our end. I think we still have some reticence there as far as us. I mean, I have had meetings with different companies, and I think ultimately we're gonna do that shift. But I'm telling you personally, I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant.
How come? Share. I want to know.
You know, it.
I don't know. You got to tell me.
I'm about to tell you. So it dates
Hmm.
back to the fact that I've always had great reliance on us being in the driver's seat. And I am just like a lot of people out there sort of hesitant of how much control we're releasing about allowing that into our environment, and how much is that going to affect the effectiveness, or how we can really utilize that in the long term, and how it impacts people in the long term, not just for here right now, or how it benefits Delcin Consulting Group to use it and get an advantage, but also the long term future of consulting for everyone else.
So, did you say that your outlook on artificial intelligence for the time being is more of like a negative one until some other changes occur?
No, it's not a negative one. It's cautious optimism.
Cautious optimism. I like that. Take small steps. Don't sprint into anything head on and just watch, wait to see what happens.
Yes, I'm having the conversations. I'm hearing this is what you could do here, this is what you could do there. And I just haven't hit the yes button as of yet. And I think ultimately it's inevitable.
Yeah, it is inevitable. And I'd be interested to see how your thoughts change when you do hit that yes button. So, for the firms, give me a little bit of a range of the firms that are like your core target. Tell me about like sort of size and structure of them.
Size and structure, startups are always great, because, it's all they're starting with, hey, we're excited. We have this, we're going to be great. We're going to change the world. So that optimism is always great to see. And also, they also need a lot of support on the legal side and the other sides as well. And I think the highest is more like the mid size, because everybody else will have their internal team and, would use a larger firm for consulting. So typically it's a startup to about, small bordering the mid-sized firms that we target.
That's excellent. And do you operate nationwide?
No, because we do legal consulting and
Hmm.
actual legal work, and to be fair to and equitable for us, we typically operate within Washington D.C. and California only
Okay.
the states that we have licensed attorneys, because we have attorneys wearing both hats, and we don't want to be caution you're getting in trouble with unlicensed practice of law.
And so, where do you see policy changing that would either have a positive or negative effect on these younger tech firms, which you are advising either under DC policy or California policy?
I think with this new administration, everything is up in the air. We don't know what may or may not happen. But I think I am looking towards positive legislation. That's because I think there's somewhat of an inclination that the new administration is more geared towards technology and advances with some of the relationships that I are being upheld as public with the administration and other larger companies that I don't necessarily need to mention. So I think it's gonna be I think things are only gonna get better in that sense, in allowing more I guess transparency. I think we fear what we don't understand. We fear what we think is gonna take our job and take away the certainty of what we've done every day. And I think to the extent that this administration or certain policies allow for more transparency and things are being upheld to the public in a greater way, then it's going to be becoming the norm, and that will allow people to be able to take that plunge, including myself.
I hope so. I'm more cautious of an idiot behind the wheel of a car than the car itself, if you know what I'm talking about as a metaphor for the technology.
Mhm.
So, if you were in the strategic position to advise, in terms of policy to some of these larger AI firms, what would sort of be that first angle you would attack? What's the first thing you start advising on? Say, like, strategically, this is the direction we need to move in.
I think emphasis on education, you cannot go wrong with that.
Mm,
I think you want to over educate. And to the extent that people see, the familiarity, right? The more you educate, you see so much about something, then it becomes part of your normal, right? Oh yeah, sure. Oh yeah, it's normal. Versus, oh my God, this thing again, it just popped up and then it's disappeared. I don't know what it does.
right.
Education is the key piece I would emphasize.
Now, do you feel that you recently published a book, correct?
Yes, yes.
Is there a lot of education in that book?
There's education around it, I guess education around more of the experiences that I've had, and being able to leverage those and use those to be able to get to where I am and build my companies. I think storytelling is also a way of sharing experiences and also educating people. It's not necessarily the traditional route, but people can learn more from a story sometimes better than to holding a book to their head and saying, 1 + 1 = 2. But then you tell them a story about one goes around in a circle and meets the other one and it equals two. That might resonate to some people better than the other way.
For sure. Storytelling is one of the oldest forms of posterity for human knowledge. So I definitely agree with that. If people wanted to find more of your book, right, maybe order themselves a copy, where would they go to do that?
So the book is going to be officially released on Amazon in April, but it is going to be available on my website. That's catherinedelcin.com.
Congratulations with that. And for the tech companies that do listen to this podcast, and there are quite a few, where would they find more about your services so that they could contact you if they're interested?
So that would be through Delcin Consulting Group. It's Delcin Consulting, Delcin.consulting. So that would be our website. And if you Google us, you'll be able to find us. And I do want to say one thing for the companies out there. I think more than anything right now, the ingenuity that humans have put forth, there's no question about that. And I think there may be some uncertainty right now about certain placement of what we do, who we are, and what's to come. So I think I would say to the tech companies out there, to allow themselves to grow with the times, allow themselves to move at their own pace and not take any direction that is contrary to what they internally feel that they need to take. And, just take their time and it's okay. And it is going to be okay. That's what we do. We evolve and we grow.
Yeah, Catherine, thank you for sharing that. I know that's going to be heard loud and clear. And we do appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the attention. Thank you for putting up with my questions, And you heard it all here, folks. This was Catherine Delcin, managing attorney of Delcin Consulting Group. If you're in California, you're in the DC area, you want to scale up that business, if you're a startup, she's the woman you want to call. Catherine, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
Okay.